Today, we are exploring the world of college esports. We are incredibly lucky to have Wim Stocks join us in this journey. Wim is the GM and CEO of World Gaming Network, which includes his role of chairman at North America's largest collegiate esports business, which has provided over $1 million in scholarships while partnering with 1,800 educational institutions under its premier tournament series, Collegiate StarLeague, also known as CSL. Previously, Wim has held vice president roles at the giant global brand Atari. On top of this incredible career, Wim is an advocate for diversity and inclusion with some great successes in the past 2 years, building partnerships with key stakeholders to attract fresh personalities to the esports industry who encourage the industry to grow and develop its audience. Wim, thank you for joining us today.
Sam, how are you? Good to be here, and thank you for. You're so nice to ask me in.
Amazing. I just want to jump straight into it. Wim, in the esports industry, you're often referred to as the Godfather of Esports.
This means I'm old, Sam. It just means I'm old.
I want to ask you, since you're the Godfather, what is your first memory of gaming?
Well, this is part not just my first memory, but very formative too. I grew up with in a household where my dad was fascinated by pinball machines. Do you even know what a pinball machine is?
I do.
Yeah,
I remember the famous one, the Terminator 2 pinball machine was my favorite.
Oh, that's an icon in pinball. But with a basement having 3 pinball machines, by the time I was 7, I could take them apart and put them back together again. Just fascinated by everything they stood for, the bells, the whistles, the lights, everything very obviously very electromagnetic. And that was really the foundation of my interest in gaming. And it's not just an interest, it's a love of gaming. And fast forward 10 years later, my first encounter with a arcade machine in a bar, which was Pong. Pong to this day, still my favorite game. I was actually pretty good at it. Well, you could say that I was one of the first esports players who used to play Pong for beers. So that's my earliest recollection. Still fondly remembering. I love when I am out in New York City. They have this big resurgence of bars that have pinball machines in them. So I've been able to return to my roots. I feel like a 7-year-old again when I go into these places. So it's been part of my life. My dad was a STEM guy before the word STEM even existed, and that sort of was handed down to me. I'm a math major, and so in more contemporary realm, while I was in school, became a coder. Math major coder. So my interest in all of gaming and computing, for that matter, was a real natural part of my upbringing.
Cool. And one of the questions I have around gaming, I see some people get in gaming a bit later in their career. I wanted to know for you, was it something that you knew before starting your professional career that you wanted to be in the gaming industry, or you just jumped in the industry and then felt the passion while being there?
Well, keep it back to the age question. Keep in mind that when I was coming up, there was no gaming business. There was a computing business. People had computers, and there were Apple IIs and things like that people played their games on, although they were very rudimentary. You're probably familiar with MUD games. Just all text-based sorts of gaming. That was really in the early days. But I was, when I started my career in gaming was 1988, before there really was a gaming business. And, Nintendo hadn't launched yet, PlayStation hadn't launched, and Xbox obviously hadn't launched yet either. So, but it was early on in PC gaming when Sierra Online was a brand new company and people didn't know what to make of games like Gabriel Knights, but that was when I saw an opportunity that, wow, this is something. There is an opportunity for a business around gaming. You won't remember retailers like Egghead and Businessland and Computerland in the U.S. Those were huge, becoming huge retailers of then still a fledgling business around selling computer software, and slowly but surely the shelves started to get stocked with these very rudimentary fundamental games. The Sierra Online was one of my favorites, and still to this day they're around. Still around. So so that was my my entry point. And the good news is that it has continued to grow. And I frankly, when we started this company, World Gaming, in 2008, I had no idea, the word esports didn't exist. Gaming was obviously a big thing on numerous platforms, but mobile gaming was still kind of new in those days. So it's been fun to see it become what it has become. And I started to say that I don't think anybody had a clue in those days as to how big gaming would be. And as you know, esports is still not very big in the overall scheme of things. Gaming, $170 billion a year business globally. Esports still just under $2 billion. Yet it is where all the energy is, where all the heat is, where all the interest is, and it's fueling so much around the rest of the gaming realm. And my way of thinking, it's not only changing gaming, it's changing the world in so many ways. I might be a little biased in that, but that's but it's a great time to be in gaming, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think, my belief is that it's starting to change the point because it's touching the new generation, and this generation, when they are going to grow, they are going to be more and more involved in, and maybe not watching sport, but watching video games. That is already a turning point here in the industry. One question that I want to follow with, like, saying this story, this really shows me that you have been around for every step of the evolution of the industry, and you probably have seen some interesting thing or wild things happening in that industry. I wanted to know if there was maybe a few things that and on a few experiences that really stayed in your mind as being, like, either whether that be in your career or wild experiences that you have been experiencing in the esport world.
Well, I won't take up this entire podcast with this, but there is definitely one experience that has stood out in my experience in my career, far above everything else, and it's like an encounter, not just once but 3 separate occasions, with Michael Jackson, who wanted to build a video game, and he came to us. The long story, I won't bore you with how it came. It didn't happen directly, but sort of circuitously. And June 10th, I remember it very well, June 10th, 2001, I'm sitting in the living room of Michael Jackson's house in Neverland Ranch, having a conversation with him about what he wanted to build, a Final Fantasy-esque kind of game, very epic, very, big RPG. And he wanted to be the protagonist. So he had an artist do all this work up and storyboarding around him as the protagonist. Big full chest, big cape, wind blowing his hair. And we sat for the better part of an hour while he tried to articulate his vision for the game. I have witnesses to this. This is the day when we went to Neverland Ranch that day, we had to check our cell phones. This was 2001. Cell phones weren't nearly what they are today, but you couldn't have a camera, couldn't have your cell phone with you. We had to sign NDAs. And I have 2 witnesses, so this is all bona fide true. A meeting about a month beforehand, a meeting about a year afterwards. And the whole notion of this was he wanted to be in the video game business. And he couldn't. So here's my favorite game. We're talking about Atari, and my favorite game I just mentioned is Pong. And he said to me, "Well, what is the game that goes like this? What is the game?" You mean Pong? Yes, Pong. I said, "Well, Michael, that's my favorite game." And so So we had, definitely, there's nothing, nothing that comes close to my meetings with Michael Jackson about building a Final Fantasy S game. Now, there is an interesting sort of denouement of this story, in that at the time we were also the license holder for all the Hasbro IP. So Hasbro, as you know, board games and a number of other things. Well, Monopoly, as you know, is a big part of the Hasbro realm, and as we were finishing our meeting this particular June 10th day, Michael, as we're getting ready to drive away, he says, I've always wanted to make a Monopoly version of a Neverland Ranch version of Monopoly. And I said, really? And Leslie said, could we work on that? Could we find out if we could do that? And I said, well, sure. I'm happy to bring that back to Hasbro for licensing. Now, this is spinning in my head as we're driving away, thinking there's no way in the world that Hasbro, a toy company, selling their goods to kids.
Yeah.
And this is still 2001, but a lot of his pedophilia stories are coming out. And so I'm thinking, well, how am I going to ask Hasbro for a license for Neverland Ranch with a pretty renowned? I mean, it wasn't ascertained at that point. Nothing was proven, but a lot of rumors about his being a pedophile. So when I got back, I told the story to my boss at the time, was the CEO of the company, and he said, well, we'll call Alan Hassenfeld. Alan Hassenfeld is their two brothers were Has brothers.
Yeah.
And so he sat me down and he put on the speakerphone, and Alan, it's Bruno calling. We have something we want to talk to you about. And so I remember it like it was yesterday, and Bruno says, Wim, tell Alan what you just what just happened. So I told him the whole story, and he said, wait a minute, you're asking me if Hasbro will license Monopoly to a known pedophile? Said, are you kidding me? Click, hung up the phone, and that was the last time we had. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have sworn. I'm sorry. That was
okay.
Those were his words. Exactly. And so now you can see why that story has stood up over time as really being
amazing. That is, I mean, that's crazy. That was so much more than what I thought the comments you were going to tell us. I had a few ideas, but not that one.
No, that was
that's incredible. So I want to know a little bit more about World Gaming and CSL and what you guys really do, and then also what's the vision of the company? What are you guys really trying to achieve, in this space?
So we started this company as I mentioned, in 2008. When we started, I also mentioned, I think the word esports didn't exist, and
yep.
we had in those days, to play a video game competitively, we saw this happening everywhere. So kids would, they'd pack up their Xboxes, they'd all get together, they'd go to a hotel somewhere, in Florida. They would all put in $100. They'd land their Xboxes together. They'd stay for the weekend. They'd all compete for all the money that was in the prize pool. Prize pool, so you go, you lose right away. You've driven 400 miles. You expended all this gas. You wasted your money on hotel rooms. You've lost your $100 in the pool. You're probably out $1,000. And we looked at one another and said, boy, this is 2008. We can do this online. There's no issue with. So we built a platform in those days. Obviously, online gaming was a coming thing, but we built a platform that was really transactional, really a banking platform that enabled players to play against one another head to head for money. And that was the genesis of World Gaming. We built the technology over the course of 2 years. We had to winnow through all the legalities around. In those days, the notion of a skill-based game was unknown, but all the sort of arcane laws and legislations around gambling. If you were playing a game of skill against somebody else playing that same game of skill, as long as there's nobody betting on the outcome of your match, that's perfectly legal. It's by and large legal. Skill-based gaming. Nobody understood skill-based gaming in the 2009 timeframe. We had to, not only did we build this platform, but we also had to go educate everybody. We had solid legal opinions that what we were doing was completely onside. And so as we launched this company, and we were getting ready to launch it in 2010, early 2010, we were on our way to a February launch, and I got a call from a guy in Toronto saying, we're hearing about what you're doing. I work for Virgin. Does Richard Branson know anything about this? I said, well, likely not. I don't know Richard. Do you know Richard? And well, I work in Virgin Mobile in Toronto. We heard about this through one of your investors. Richard should hear about this. So I said, oh, great. Thinking that how many of these stories have you heard before, and nothing ever comes of it. A week later, we're sitting in Richard Branson's office in Mayfair, talking about what we were doing, this World Gaming platform. He, right on the spot, how the Virgin brand is used or utilized or leveraged. It's generally applied to a sort of a traditional business, but the business model has been spun on its head a little bit, or experiences like Virgin. You think about Virgin Airlines or Virgin Hotels or Virgin Mobile, all very different experiences. So he saw this as, wow, this is a very different proposition for gaming. We want to be part of it. And he was also in the gambling business. Virgin Games was a gambling entity back in the late 2008-9 timeframe. Long story. He wanted to buy the company. We said it's not for sale. He ended up giving us the license for Virgin in exchange for a small sort of royalty on our revenues every year. And we ended up launching what was going to be launched as World Gaming. We launched as Virgin Gaming in 2010 at E3 in 2010. That we were on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. We were on the front page of the New York Times. Play video games for money. There was that was the story, and it couldn't have been a better story for us. That's exactly what we wanted. And again, esports, the word didn't exist. Competitive gaming was around, but it wasn't nearly as galvanized as. And our launch, the fact that we got EA on early, we got 2K on early, we got Capcom on early. We have Microsoft and Sony both very much involved. We had a huge integration with Xbox Live in our earlier days. That was what propelled us, and that's what propelled this notion and the whole illumination for competitive gaming. And I frankly don't remember what year it was that esports started to be more prevalent and the use of it more pronounced, but had to be in the 2013-2014 timeframe. And by that point, we were already 5 years along in our history. So we've been doing this for a while. We moved away from head-to-head gaming because it was always misunderstood, as we went to more of a sponsor model for, instead of head-to-head gaming for money, we would take a VIG, we call it a game management fee, off of each transaction. But as sponsors, more and more sponsors wanted to come in, they wouldn't sponsor our events because they thought it was gambling. We know, we're okay. It's skill gaming. We're on side. It's all good. But the perception was still that we were gambling. So we moved away from the head-to-head money match play and went to purely free-to-play or pay-to-enter models that were sponsor-driven. So that's where that was 2014 when that all happened. We then bought CSL in 2015, and what was so great about, and I'm getting back to your question, Sam. Sorry to
that's all right. No, it's good.
But our position, and it was really gelled in that time frame, is that the pro ranks were getting very well established. There were no pro leagues at that point in time. There were ESL was one of them, but there were no franchises. There were no franchise models. None of that. And what we saw the opportunity was, well, how does a player become a pro? What are the steps needed for a player to be able to realize their dreams or aspirations as a pro player? So we have relationships with all the publishers. We talk to the publishers. Some were more formed in their structures. Many weren't still at that point in time, but we work closely with them all and saying the funnel is important. The path to the pros, that's important. The funnel's where the volume is. The pros are the top 1%, no different than if you're a basketball player or tennis, Sam, like you, a tennis player, the top 1% are the pros of the world. Another 99% are the aspiring pros. That was what really galvanized it for us, is that this is where we have value. This is the benefits that we bring players. This is the benefits we bring publishers, that our funnels for players are big, wide open, friendly, accessible. We'll bring the volume and show people what it's going to take to get from point A to point B. And if you're truly an aspiring player, how to make it to the pros. So that was our model, and to this day, that's what motivates us. That's what gets us up in the morning. In the collegiate realm, as we started to talk about earlier, even more of a dynamic there about the funnel, the big accessibility. We've done a lot in not only with getting more players involved, but diverse base of players too. Women, minorities. We're doing a lot with the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities that by and large have not had a lot of support. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't have all the resources that the big schools do. And so we've put our spotlight on those schools to help them build competitive gaming infrastructure, to build curriculum, to build events, to help. We've helped a couple schools design their LAN centers and use esports and gaming as a recruiting mechanism. So that's what we do. We're at our essence, we're tournament organizers, tournament operators, and league operators, really on the collegiate side. But we've done so much, and we pivoted away from that pure competitive realm now to bringing more kids in, more players in, through any number of means. It doesn't mean just participation. It means education. It means curriculum. It means so much more.
This is so interesting, because this is mainly what we're passionate about at Valor Esports, is to bring the assets to players to be able to go to the next level. And actually the players that are not professional and don't have contact with professional players often end up losing a lot of time playing, right? Like they spend time, like me, for example. I take my example because I'm a Counter-Strike failure, I can't call it this way. And I spend a lot of time playing Counter-Strike like a zombie on my computer, thinking I would become good. And now that I'm an adult and I look at how the professional train, I just realized that I lost 2 years trying to become good by playing. And of course I enjoyed it, but this was not my objective. So I did not make it, not only because my motivation might not have been the best, but also the assets that I had around me to become professional. I feel that was lacking, and the infrastructure also around. So I'm really interested into knowing so far. So throughout your journey with that vision of helping players going from non-pro to pro, what are some of the achievements that you're really proud of, and that you think that you achieved into like bridging that gap?
Well, one of the things that we did, really starting in the 2015 timeframe, is we moved to, we used to be sort of opportunistic, to find an event, to find a game, to find an opportunity to build a competition. We had the luxury of an online platform that we had built, and so much of that programming is easy to spin up. But we wanted it to be bigger. We wanted it to start, when I say bigger, having more presence and more prominence. We had huge tournaments online. We had one Halo tournament that had over 300,000 people involved. We're on Halo 4. It was a leaderboard sort of structure. So not a bracketed tournament, but leaderboard structure. We had over 300,000 right around the launch of Halo 4. And so we had big events, but we always wanted to show those events off with live events. So when we got our next round of investment from Cineplex in 2015, our goal was to use our platform as an online qualifying mechanism, get down to a manageable number, and then move into live events. And by and large, that's what we accomplished. Not only did we accomplish that, but we also wanted to annualize these programs or make them more recurring so people could. That was the other thing about esports in the early days. Events would pop up 2 weeks before they'd happen, and no promotion, no organization, no recruiting to get players in. We said we want these to be predictable. We want our events to be something that players will anticipate. And so we, in 2015, went to a model where we had a Call of Duty tournament early in the year. We had a Forza driving event early in the year. We had in the spring we would have NBA 2K or an NHL that would correlate with the culmination of those traditional sports seasons. In the summer months, we had a fighting game event. In the fall, we had a Madden event, and moved into the sports titles that are so big, and FIFA, NBA 2K, NHL as well. So I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we were able to achieve, not only did we run really nice events, but we had tremendous publisher support, and those go hand in hand. We ran quality events. They were well attended to. Our team was so good about the details, and we impressed the publishers enough that they said, okay, we like what you're doing, keep doing it. And so we did achieve our goal. We had a recurring event every year, and as we matured this model, the thing that I guess is really reinforcing to us, and again, sort of I can get emotional about it, is that as our events culminate, we would crown a champion, and those champions, with the help of the publishers, would get a spot or a spotlight in one of the pro events, one of the major events. So this notion of path to the pros, we fulfilled that. We weren't just talking it, we were actually walking it as well. And Call of Duty, 4 years in a row, our winning team. First year we did a weird lone wolf thing, 1v1, but after that we did 4s and 5s, and every year our winning team would be on the main stage at a Call of Duty event, CWL event. One of the challengers coming up, but we fulfilled what we wanted them to have. We wanted them to have that place in the limelight, and we've done that with every, from Madden to Rocket League to League of Legends to all the games we've involved with. We've achieved that. It's either through our World Gaming brand or through our collegiate brand. We've been able to accomplish that leveling up for the player, and putting them in a spotlight where they because so much of this doesn't exist. It didn't exist 4 years ago. Now, slowly but surely, it's more of that infrastructure is distinguishing itself. And it's a great thing. The publishers now recognize how important it is. They relied on us to do that for many years. Now they are also doing it as well. But so that to me is that it not only what we set out to do, but what we accomplished it, and really thrilled that we run the kind of events that the publishers are proud of and want to reward us with that kind of attention and support.
That's amazing. And just to clarify, like the tournament that you're running, they are not tournament for professional, right? They are tournament for anyone that wants to join in.
We, in the early days of Call of Duty, we would get professionals coming in, and we always, so initially it was sort of a blend of I would call them semi-pro events, but as we got more and more, we knew who the good players were. We worked with Activision, and they were helpful. They said, okay, that guy's too good, his team's too good. We would advise you not, because you want to put on a tournament and somebody comes in and smokes the whole field. That won't be fun for anybody. So we were always very conscious of making sure there's parity, making sure that the playing field was somewhat level. There's always going to be, obviously, there's going to be a winner that distinguishes himself, but we did a lot of diligence to make sure that the the field overall. And we ran big events. We had our the last Call of Duty event we ran a year ago. We had 1,900 teams of 5 involved. That's a big tournament. That's a big Call of Duty amateur tournament. And so that was the other good thing, that our events became brands in and to themselves. They built equity. Our game brands, our event brands, build equity for themselves. And every year it's, oh yeah, we got to go to Toronto. We got to play in the Call of Duty. We got to go to Las Vegas. We got to play in the NHL. We got to go to Atlantic City to play in Rocket League. So that was that to me. We set out to do that, and I think we accomplished it in a really nice way.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love hearing that. I love also the fact that you factored in that playing level. I mean, as an ex-tennis player, I've definitely been through an experience where you come into a tournament and there's always one kid better than the rest, and it's you just hope that he would move up and go to the better league, but he just sits there and smashes you also, and it's not enjoyable for anyone, even people watching.
No, that's right. It's not. It's a bad experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Something I'm really interested in is the scholarship process that you've been able to develop and provide through CSL. When did that really start to get momentum, and what have you kind of seen as its current state and where it's going now?
Well, we've, when we owned CSL as of early 2015, and the young man that started it, Duran Parsi, was a good. He started, and you may or may not know the story, that the name Collegiate StarLeague in the early days was purely around StarCraft 2. So that's where the star came from, and it was started as just college kids representing their schools, playing StarCraft against one another. And in those days, they played for pride, for anything. But as this grew, and as we took it over in 2015, that we would get a lot. Well, why are you encouraging kids to play video games when they're supposed to be studying? But so, well, one of the support mechanisms for us is that we want these kids to stay in school, finish school, and as we garnered monetization from sponsors or media dollars or from Twitch or from whomever, that we would funnel those towards scholarships. It became a really important part of who we are, what we are, and to this day, where it's part of last year, or I should say this year, our culmination in April, culmination of our collegiate league every year is in April or May. It starts in the fall, like in a normal cadence of a collegiate season. Starts in the fall, then they have a little hiatus at Christmas time or holiday time, and then move into the spring, where then the playoffs ensue, and then go into the grand finals. Our grand finals, if you're familiar with what the Final Four is in the United States, it's college basketball Final Four. Our grand finals are the Final Four for each of the college leagues that we run. Mm-hmm. And this past year, obviously, the COVID, the pandemic, it affected it. We had a big event planned for Las Vegas. Every year, collegiately, our grand finals is our biggest event. And we were all set to go to Vegas. Obviously, got shut down. And we thought, well, I guess this year we cancel. We started to think, well, we just cancel this event. And we started hearing from the schools and the teams and the players that, well, we rely on those scholarship dollars. Those are important to us. Those are important for us to finish our educations. And so as much as we didn't want to have a bad experience for our sponsors, we said we've got to culminate in a sort of a semi-normal way. And so instead of having a big live event, the great thing about esports, it can be a virtual event. And we did our virtual grand finals, not to the huge acclaim and not to the huge crowds or activation for a sponsor, but the sponsors were all very willing to support this. We culminated. We were able to award the scholarship dollars, and that is a really important thing for us. It was really interesting and I'll say fascinating to finally the schools say, these kids rely on these dollars. Can you try and figure out how to run your grand finals? So, and we did a nice job. We had two production partners helping us to did an amazing job. You didn't know if it was live or not. So that's the great thing about college esports. And so this fall is you're no different over where you guys are. College football sort of rules United States in the fall. Well, it's been a mess, right? Some games are on, some games are off. Some leagues are running, some schools are running, some aren't. There's just no semblance of normalcy at this point. But we started our college leagues just as we always do. We're well into the season now. We're actually going to go on hiatus here for the holidays another week, and there's no difference for us. Our leagues are running, and so that's the nice thing about having esports and having a virtual sport, an online sport, because these can go on and not be impacted dramatically by. We would have by this time, and we always punctuate our league play with live event play. They tend to be smaller events in a student union or a dormitory or a athletic complex or something. But by this time, any given year other than this year, we would have had 40 to 50 live events by now. But we obviously those are all shut down. Everything's virtual now. Our grand finals for 2021, May 2021, we're already planning for them to be virtual too. So, but the notion of your question is the scholarships. We felt it was really important that we culminate these seasons in spite of all the obstacles, and I think we did the right thing.
Yeah, we have a fairly loaded question on this podcast, and we've asked a lot of people, but I'm really excited to ask you this one. You are called the Godfather, but I want you to put yourselves in the shoes if you were an esports god and you had total control over the industry and its direction. What are some things that you would immediately try to work on and change if you had that ability and power to push it in a direction that you see fit? I mean, you're doing it from you're doing a lot with your own companies in the direction you're going, but what are some other things that you see in the industry that could be adapted and changed?
Well, I'll go back to our emphasis on diversity. It's still, to me, sort of unconscionable that in this day and age you have this bad behavior that takes place online, the toxicity, the misogynistic, the homophobic, racist stuff. That doesn't do anybody any good. And so if I could change one thing, it's still a dynamic. It's hurting more participation as a result. And if I could change one thing, I'd want that behavior to go away, or if it's not going to go away without some sort of policing of it. And I think people like EA, we've seen what EA has done with Madden. They're actually vetting all their Madden Pro players, and if they have any sort of infractions around racist talk or misogynistic or homophobic or any of that, they ban the Madden players from being a pro. So that it's starting to happen, and it's starting to happen in a very positive way. So I can't say the industry isn't making strides in that regard. Some really good strides, but I think about how that sort of behavior has held the industry back, and has held the engagement of this industry back, and it's given this industry a bad name. So if I that would be one thing that I would advocate for. Just people, we've had tournaments where kids have acted up. We give them sort of a one strike chance, and if it continues, they get banished. And I think more of that has to go on. Of all the cheating going on, that too is not a great thing, especially in Counter-Strike. There's a lot of that unfortunately going on. So that sort of human behavior, which is not easy to moderate or to modify. Those are the things that have unfortunately I believe have held gaming back. But the good news is the positive forces are in the market. The positive forces are proving to be the more powerful. I sound a little naive in saying that, but I think we're much better path than we were, say, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something around the toxicity. We had our previous episode was with someone who has been victim of toxicity online, and she was Jess, and it's a girl gaming, and she's playing Counter-Strike. We play together sometime, and one of the things that I wanted to emphasize here is that on top of affecting the participation of people in this industry, it also affects personally some people very deeply, like they are alone at home playing computers and facing, and we could see that, like you could watch the previous episode and see it, that it deeply affects the personality of a person that is trying to enjoy a game and trying to be in like a happy position. And I think this is very important. On top of that, with the COVID, where a lot of players are alone at home playing their favorite games, that's their escape, right? To be happy, and that's their happy moment. And facing that toxicity is just destroying that moment and could bring them in some very dark place.
We are aligned, Luke, in how we feel about that. So we all want to keep an eye out for it and call it out when it's happening, and make sure do everything we can to tamp it down from happening again.
Yeah, and I love. Sorry, Luke, you go, man.
The EA model that you mentioned, I was not aware of it, but I think that's something that's really interesting that I believe that should be pursued, because in some of the interview as well, some of the things that has been mentioned is that the lack of having like role model at the professional level that you would have in sport, for example, is sometimes affecting, because if the higher level players are toxic, then the young player would aspire to be the same way. So having that control from EA seems to be like a good way forward.
Well, and think of the license that they have that they represent. They represent the NFL, one of the biggest, sporting licenses, if not one of the biggest licenses in the world. And they don't want any sort of affiliation with that kind of behavior. They can't afford to have that kind of affiliation. So they're EA is very smart about those kind of things. They're doing the same thing with the NHL and with obviously with FIFA. So it's not only for this dynamic, but the partners that are represented, the licenses that are involved. All of that has to be considered when these sort of rules and enforcements and I'll call them legalities, but when those are put on top of these kind of these structures and events.
Yeah, it's really good to hear. I often refer to it as the Roger Federer model, where he's sitting at the top of tennis, and even if he's not number one, he's almost perfect, right, for the image of the sport. And I think in previous interviews, when we started researching our project and our goal and our vision as a company, a parent once said to us that they would be uncomfortable at this point in time. This is a young parent with a young child who does know about the industry of gaming. Said, I'd be uncomfortable if my son became an esports professional at this point. I think if you want to achieve your goal, you need to change what the perception of an esport player looks like. And that was really powerful. And I think when EA does that, it has massive ramifications for the, turning the ship in that direction, that you want your top players to represent the community.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome. That's so cool to hear. I wanted to, just on that point of parents, I wanted to start talking to you a little bit just to finish off about the industry and some of the opportunities it possibly provides for people. We understand that, professional players can make a great living, and it's going to get better and better. And there's different ways that they do that. The collegiate space is offering support to, if you're not quite ready to move to that top level, it's offering support in education, which is incredible. What are some other parts of industry that, parents, other people don't really see that open up opportunities for work?
I had an interesting conversation just this morning about, the notion of an influencer, of online persona that, in many regards, it certainly goes well beyond gaming, but certainly the rise of influencers happened through gaming. And we had a conversation I had a conversation with a friend of mine whose grandson, here we go on the age thing again, whose grandson is starting to distinguish himself as and so he was asking me, is this legit? Is this for real? And I said, oh yeah, this is the new celebrity. This is the new, how it works. And you don't, as we all know, you don't have to be a good gamer. It helps to be a good gamer. Look at, Ninja and Dr. Lupo and Dr. Disrespect and all these guys that have distinguished themselves. They started as really good gamers, but now they're personalities. They might still play. They know the games. They know how to talk about the games. They know how to, and they've taken their personalities and put them on top of all of the game mechanics and have really proven to be celebrities in every regard. So it's sort of a contemporary spin on being a celebrity, but it's as you know, it's legit nonetheless. It's just a very different way. And as you guys are aware, it's not easy to do. You get up every day. Ninja, poor guy. Can you imagine? You have to be on camera 10 hours a day in order to fulfill all his sponsors, to fulfill his Twitch obligations, his game obligations. I mean, that's got to be exhausting. But it's, if it were easy, everybody be doing it and everybody be successful at it. He's obviously distinguished himself in some really amazing ways. Dr. Lupo, his shtick and his angle has been more about the philanthropic side. It's worked really well for him. So I guess the notion is just a gamer, a player is only one facet, and really one small facet of how to have a career in gaming. And you think about, I spoke to a group at a college, Becker College, and they have a very robust esports program. And the discussion, they have a sports management program. Well, that sports management program, around careers in sports is the exact same template that esports needs. And so, and Dr. Rotako there, a great guy, become a good friend of his. He runs the business school there. His program, his esports program is all in the business school. It's not in the athletic department, not in the student life department. It's in the business school. So this notion that, you can be a production person, you could be a marketing person, you could be an analyst, you could be a bit sort of business mind in around gaming and esports. You could be a developer, you could be a graphic designer. All those kinds of opportunities exist for gaming, and yet we still get hung up as well. My kids, there's no way he's going to be a part of the 1%. So probably not. Odds are against him or her, but nonetheless, there are so many other opportunities to be involved in gaming and esports, and I think most colleges now, many still new to this, but most colleges are starting to understand, man, gaming is a really important dynamic. Nielsen did a study, I think it's a few months old now, but kids leaving high school, going into college, 85% of them identify themselves as being either gamers or gaming enthusiasts. Most colleges would be shocked at that. You say, what? How do we not know that? How do we not see that? And as you know, so many schools are sort of the traditional mainstream. It's taken those with vision, and it's taken those with sort of more open-mindedness to be plugged into these kids and understand that gaming it's not just a hobby. It's a lifestyle. It's how they consume their entertainment. And they're not reading books. They're not going to movies. They're not watching television. They don't own cable subscriptions. And when they're entertaining themselves, they're online. And when they're online, they're largely playing video games. So so it's a different thing. More and more as we march forward in time, that people will understand that and get that. But it's still astounding to me. I did an interview yesterday. This big promotion we're doing with the NFL around the Madden event for charity. the very first interview we had, we were on a virtual media tour. The guy was looking at esports and he said, "So how do you pronounce that? A sports? Or is that?" I said, "Well, no, that's esports." He said, "Well, what's esports?" I mean, still, this is a guy on a television station who's sure more awareness of and more exposure. A sports? I go, what are you talking about? What word do you see? Well, it says E and then sports. I said, well, it's esports, not a sports. It's E. I mean, this was my first interview. I have 30 media interviews. This was the very first interview. I'm going, wow, we still have a ways to go here.
Yeah. I think, you're 100% on the money. I mean, it all starts with your passion, right? And they talk about, people trying to do things that they love. You wake up doing something you love. Sometimes it's not so much the action that you're doing, it's what the industry that you're working in. It gives you purpose. You might be doing, I'm an accountant, I'm an investment, but you might be doing accounting work for in the esport industry, and you're involved. And that's important to recognize, that it starts with that gaming passion. What I wanted to kind of follow up before we sign off, and I want to hear a little bit about what your things that are coming up in your world with network gaming and CSL. And so do you have kind of 3 recommendations that you would give to parents and kids who want to start moving in this direction? Where do you start, and what are some really good things, or 3 things that you could do to help yourself position yourself better?
One of the there's a truism, as I've moved around and gone to events and talk to parents and talk to kids, and there is one truism about the kids who are clear-minded about their goals in gaming, in goals for being involved in gaming. Could be a participant, could be in business, could be some sort of support mechanism. Is that parental support? This is not rocket science by any stretch, but parental support is really, really important. And when I talk to professional players, or I see their parent, I was at an event, the Houston Outlaws, the Overwatch League, had an event. I went down, met the players, the owners of the team are good friends of mine. Met the players, and in every single case, that player has amazing support from his or her parents, and they think about this. The kid growing up, they're in their early 20s. When these players are learning video gaming, they're learning it in a 5 or 6 time frame. This would have been in many, as I grew up, that would have been a time when parents would say, "You can't play any video games. Stop it. You got to do homework." And the vision that these parents had to let these kids do what they were passionate about. Now, not only are they looked up to by the millions of aspiring players, they're also making a really nice living, and they're part of a dynamic that, as I go back to what I said earlier, is changing the world. So I think that the parents have to understand they're really important in a kid's approach to gaming. They've got to be open-minded. They got to learn about it. I have so many parents of friends of mine that they just assumed their kids were slackers because all I want to do is play video games. And now those same parents come to me and say, "Well, my grandson wants to be a professional player. How can you help him?" So so it's a very different dynamic, and it's far past the time when that should have happened. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased in that approach. So
yeah.
So I would tell you that's really important. I think also as a player themselves, that because the infrastructure is lacking, we're doing our part. A lot of people, a lot of companies, and a lot of publishers doing their part, but still a lot of the impetus on a player to distinguish themselves in gaming is on them. And so staying eyes wide open, finding mentors, getting a mentor to help you, getting somebody who understands the industry to give you advice as a player or even as a business person. That's a really important thing to if in so many other dynamics, yeah, there's a really clear path, even in business, a clear path from going from point A to point B in video gaming and esports. Still by and large the Wild West. So I for a player, male or female, to really embrace what it is they're doing, to understand what they want to do as early as they can. Not an easy thing to say. It is an easy thing to say, much less easy to accomplish. But those are really important pieces for what a player needs to do, or what a person who wants to be in the business of gaming needs to kind of keep their heads about them.
Amazing, thank you. And I think with that, I mean, the overarching characteristic that equals success is just work ethic anyway. So I mean, it might not be the activity or the function that we've seen in the past is the way to success, but I mean, you could be a darts player, you could be a mathematician, you could do anything. It still requires hard work, and I think that comes with educating yourself about the industry and what it actually is, because then you can have some understanding and respect for how difficult it is to achieve. Before we sign off, I really want to hear about the massive event you have coming up in, is it late February, I think, or early February?
The NFL event? No. So yeah, we just announced this yesterday. We're working very closely with the NFL around a Madden tournament that is benefiting a big charity in the United States called Gen Youth. Gen Youth is one of the largest supported charities by the NFL. And what this charity does is raise money to alleviate or to eliminate food insecurity, and they do it through schools. So in the pre-pandemic times, 1 in 7, this is their stat, 1 in 7 kids under the still in school under the grade 12, 1 in 7 kids in the United States are food insecure, meaning they don't know where their next meal is coming from. The one meal they do count on every day is the meal they get through their school. So it's their lunch program or breakfast program or whatever it is. And that affects 1 in 7 kids prior to the pandemic. In the pandemic, that food insecurity level is astoundingly high at 1 in 3 kids. So what Gen Youth does is raise money to fund schools so that they can build more food reserves, more food programming to feed these food insecure kids. Really great cause, and we work closely with the NFL around a very, very unique Madden tournament. We've been running Madden tournaments for the last 10 years. When we started our company, our very first tournament was a Madden tournament. And this tournament brings together NFL players, the actual players who play the traditional game, Madden pros, who, as you know, are pros playing the Madden game. They're making a fair amount of money doing it. And then our tournament will culminate down to, we already have thousands of players registered. We just announced this yesterday. We will culminate down to a final 8 players. And then what will happen is that the Madden player, a Madden pro, NFL player and a Madden pro will team up, and they will draft one of the 8 players. We'll have 8 sets of these. Saquon Barkley, for anybody listening there, they know, big Giants running back. Dalvin Cook, who plays for the Vikings, another big running back. He's lent his name to this. Justin Jefferson, hot rookie, also wide receiver for the Vikings, also has lent their name to this. We'll have 5 other NFL players. They'll be paired up with Madden pros, and then they will draft one of the 8 players. We expect that'll be very entertaining. The draft, we expect a fair amount of smack talking and trash talking. These players compete to get one of the better finalists, one of the 8 finalists. And then after the draft is done, then they'll go into a playoff round and then do a championship. That is the last week in January, just before the Super Bowl. Now, in a normal year, the Pro Bowl, the NFL Pro Bowl, happens that week, the week before the Super Bowl. This year, there is no Pro Bowl because of just all the logistical challenges due to COVID. But they're replacing the real Pro Bowl with a virtual Pro Bowl around the game of Madden, and our event will be the lead-in to that big virtual Madden event that particular weekend. So eyeballs will be as high as we've ever had. Involvement will be as high as we've ever had. So really, and amazing partners. Campbell's Soup. I probably shouldn't mention it, but they're contributing well into six figures. Target, the big retailer in the United States, also similar boat. Doritos, Bose, the headsets, American Dairy Farmers, milk and cheese and all the products there. Twitch, the NFL, EA, all contributing in massive ways to make this a huge success. We just, again, launched yesterday. I'm so talked out after
yeah. I could understand that.
The guy who said sports, the guy couldn't pronounce
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So thank you for bringing it up. It's a really important cause, and
it is.
We if anybody's listening and wants to register, the URL is millionmealschallenge.com. The term is actually called the Million Meals Challenge, millionmealschallenge.com, and you can also text meals, the word meals, MEALS, to 52000, and that will you can donate $25 to the fund. $25. Get this. This is astounding. $25 will buy 1,250 meals for a school. So
Wow.
We were calling it the Million Meals Challenge. Actually, the goal for this is 100 million meals, and
Okay.
we don't think we're going to have a problem getting there, just given the amazing support that everybody has given us. So thank you for highlighting it, and we're super proud of what this event's going to be.
No, it's incredible. I think this just shows the capability of what not just esports, but sport in general. The purpose it is in our society, and esports is the same in that retrospect. We're going to say goodbye, but how do our listeners follow your activity and keep up to date with what you're doing? How can they get in contact with you?
Well, probably the best way is on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and I pay attention to LinkedIn. So I'm Wim Stocks. I'm the only Wim Stocks on LinkedIn thus far. So I'm pretty accepting. I don't like to be fished, and I don't like to be spammed on LinkedIn. But if you want to have a dialogue or a discussion, I'd encourage people to reach me there.
Amazing. Thank you, Wim, and thank you for joining us today. It's been incredible, and just really appreciate your time.
Lou and Sam, thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you.